to wait for just a few minutes for more folks to log in and then go ahead and start the meeting. My name is Dick Hales and I'm serving as the meeting facilitator today.
Dick, can you please talk for a minute?
Sure.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
I need to check a tech thing. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Dick Hales. I'm a member of the Coalition for Affordable Housing and Transit and want to welcome you all to the monthly March meeting of our coalition group. We have it usually on the third Monday of the month. And we try and advertise in advance what speaker we have for the meeting. We try and manage questions for the speaker as we go along, and also make numerous announcements of various things that pertain to affordable housing and transit in the Durham area. It's 12:02, so let's get started. 36 people on the call. Glad to see everyone today. Welcome everyone. Because we have such a large group since we've gone virtual here, we dispense with individual introductions, but you can see people's names on the screen. And if you have a chat, you can send a chat directly to someone or to everyone. And particularly during our speakers portion of the meeting today, we encourage you to put any questions for the speaker in the chat, and we will try and relay those to him at the appropriate time. We typically start our meetings with what we call a spotlight. We try and have a large tent of organizations in Durham concerned about affordable housing and transit, and we try and give a few minutes for an introduction for some of those groups, just to get familiar with it. This month, the spotlight is on the Open Table Ministries, and Reverend Carolyn Schultz was lined up to be with us this morning. She sent me a message a little while ago that their internet is out over at Trinity United Methodist Church, and therefore I'm going to read her comments for this morning. Good morning. In providing an emergency cold weather shelter where our guests sleep on mats on the fellowship floor, I've learned that at least a third of the men and women who come each night are working at least one job. It's simply impossible to get an apartment in Durham without proof that income equals 3 times the rent, and the wages just don't measure up. So the lineup early outside of Trinity United Methodist Church for one of our mats and blankets and a few snacks and some water are as a result. They come early because they know we are over capacity every night and must turn some people away. It's heartbreaking to know how hard they work to get a place to put their things and safely lock the door. By the way, our shelter closes on March 31st for the season. It is only open during the coldest winter months. They also have ongoing involvement with people in the Durham community who are homeless as well. And perhaps Reverend Schultz will be with us at a later meeting where she can go into that in more detail. That is the good work of the Open Table Ministry. And if you want more information, their website is opentableministry.org. Thank you. Okay, moving on our agenda. Moderator for this meeting is Rita McDaniel. Rita is a member of our coalition group and is also a member of the board of North Carolina Land Trustees as well. Rita, would you please handle the introduction of our speaker today?
Dick, this is Webb. I'm not sure that Rita's on the call. She's been texting and indicating that she thought she was at the session but couldn't see anybody, and so I've recommended that she leave that whatever Zoom session she was on and try and reconnect. I was hoping she would be here by now, but I'm not sure she is. I don't see her in the participants. So it may fall to you to give the introduction to the man who needs no introduction.
We could all say, you would like to introduce yourselves to Steve Schul, and then I could get going.
I do have the introduction, Mr. Mayor, that Rita was planning on using. If I could open it up here. Okay. Rita, I don't see you, so I'm going to tackle this. Mayor Steve Schul first came to Durham in 1969 as an undergraduate student at Duke University. He's deeply immersed in the civic and political life of the community. He is a former vice chair of the school board, served for 6 years on the Durham City Council, and was elected mayor of the city of Durham in 2017. His particular commitments are to issues of racial justice, homelessness, affordable housing, policing and crime, shared prosperity, and the preservation of open space, trails, and parks. Steve co-founded the Independent Weekly in 1983 and published it for nearly 30 years. Since 2000, he's taught public policy courses at Duke on social movements and political change. Steve and Leo Rubert have raised 2 sons, both graduates of Durham Public Schools. Steve is a longtime youth soccer coach, a reader and a runner, and he fancies himself as a pretty good cook. And with no further introduction, delighted to have Mayor Steve Schul with us today to talk about City of Durham and affordable housing matters. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, Dick. And I'm looking forward to really hearing your questions and comments. I know this is a group that has tremendous knowledge on housing and transit, and I always enjoy being here. You all play a fabulous role in our city, so thank you so much. I'll make some remarks and then look forward to hearing from you all. I'm going to try to cover, I'm going to talk mostly about housing today, but also I'm going to touch on transit and try to give the big picture as I see it on both fronts. I'm going to get down in the details a little bit on housing and just very much look forward to hearing what you all have to say. Just trying to think about the big picture a little bit. As you all know, with a support of 76% of Durham voters, we passed a $95 million affordable housing bond in November of 2019. The council had planned to raise taxes to fund this last year, but of course, then we had COVID and we had to change our plans. And so the council has now written into our budget guidelines for this year the funding of the housing bond, which the voters supported. The good news is that this will be done with about 1.38 cents on the tax rate. We had told the voters it would be about 1.6 cents, so we're getting under that, which is really good. At the same time, just to remind everybody, and I when I talk to this group, I always feel like I'm saying things that you all already know, but I think maybe some of these bear repeating. This is part of the $95 million bond is part of a $165 million 5-year affordable housing program, and that our community development department is operating. And the department has now officially started the clock on that program, and the spending and the accountability that goes with that. On April 1st, we'll have the first meeting of our Affordable Housing Implementation Committee, which is chaired by Tiffany Elder and Diane Katati, two people who are very well known to you all. It took some extra time to get this going. Honestly, when COVID first hit, I kind of dragged my feet a little bit on getting all the bylaws and everything we needed done. There were a lot of other things happening, and then it took us a while to get the appointments made, because a lot of the appointments are for people who are, for example, living in Durham Housing Authority. It took us a while to get those nominations, but we're now ready, and that'll be on April the 1st. But you also know that there's been so much ongoing work on affordable housing already, and I'm going to detail some of that and talk a little bit about what has changed during COVID. But I'm really very proud that while a lot of things had to stop this year, that the Community Development Department and DHA and our nonprofits, many of whom are represented on this call, have moved our affordable housing work ahead even during COVID, which has been really hard to do. I'll just talk about a few things. Our Affordable Housing Loan Fund, you all remember we started this a couple of years ago with $10 million. More than 40% of that has been deployed. Loans to DCLT, Reinvestment Partners, and Durham Tech. And there are 2 more pending loans, which if they are approved, that will deploy about 70% of the fund. So there are a lot of projects underway with city funding that we have already that I want to talk to you about. You all know that the Reinvestment Partners is preserving 42 units on Ross Road. And when I say preserving, and I'll talk about preserving and rehabbing a little bit as well as new units, what that means is we're going to lose these affordable units. They're either going to crumble or they're going to become market rate units unless we can preserve them or rehab them. So a lot of our funding goes to make sure that we're keeping units and not losing them. But then some of them, we have a lot of new units coming online. You all know, and I know you're as excited as I am, and the coalition was a huge advocate for the Willard Street apartments with self-help and DHIC developing those 82 units. I'm looking forward to an in-person ribbon cutting in the fall this year on those 82 units. It's very exciting. Habitat has the 37 units in Franklin Village. The city is helping support 25 of those. I drove over there the other day. There's some coming out of the ground, super exciting. DCLT, the second phase of their East Durham projects, 14 units over there. The city is supporting. Recently, CASA has finished the rehab of the Maplewood Underwood units, and DCLT's rehab of 1700 Merrimack, and now the rehab that the city supporting of 10 existing DCLT units in Southwest Central Durham. You know about the 82 units that you all have worked so hard to make happen that are coming at the old police headquarters, which is also very exciting. And DHA has completed the rehab of Daymar Court and Laurel Oaks. There's still sewer line issues that remain at Maureen Road that the city is going to be called on to help DHA ameliorate. But those rehabs have been very important and have saved several hundred units for permanent affordability. The city's funded $660,000 for 33 units of affordable housing to be built by the Scrap Exchange on their property. I know that will take some other subsidy, but that's also in the works. I'm pleased to say that after a lot of time trying to figure it out, the city is about to turn over 9 lots to Habitat and Durham Community Land Trust for affordable housing. And then there are the things that we've done that aren't just subsidies, but are just as important. For example, expanding housing choices. You all know how important this was. It makes ADUs easier for people to build on flag lots, and does a lot to support encourage the construction of missing middle housing that we need so badly. Missing middle housing we need so badly here in Durham. And then there's some of the more recent work, which has been super important. Just recently, the council approved 80 new units of construction on Farrington Road and put about $3.7 million of city money into that. On Hardy Street, DHI and self-help, 118 new units. The city put about $5 million into that. 2702 North Duke Street, CASA, 16 new units, all for 30% AMI. The city put about 2.1 million into that. Harriet's Place Reinvestment Partners, 16 units of adaptive reuse of the former Harriet Tubman YWCA, all for 30% of AMI. The city put about 1.6 million into that. And then Fitzpal, which is owned by ACRA, a 14-unit preservation project. This is all 30% of AMI for people living with HIV and AIDS, and the city put about 341,000 into that. So these are all very recent actions taken by the council to build several hundred new units and preserve units as well. DHA, we've also supported the funding of DHA projects. You all know that the J.J. Henderson rehab is underway, 178 units, $2.9 million to preserve that permanently. And then the new construction at J.J. Henderson, the city funded it $3 million. They received the tax credit they needed, and that new construction will be on 80 units right behind J.J. Henderson. And then on Elizabeth Street, the city will be supporting this with $1.1 million, the tax credit finance project that the Durham Housing Authority will be doing to build 72 affordable units there in a mixed mixed income development, which is very, very exciting. The first big part, well, along with J.J. Henderson, the second big part really of DHA's downtown redevelopment plan. So that's exciting. There are also RFPs currently open that I think are important that people should know about. The city is seeking to partner with a nonprofit organization to provide support for low-income households. They're applying for emergency rental assistance. That RFP is open now, and that's really important. And an RFP for the program administrator for our first-time homebuyer down payment assistance program. You all know that the bond issue has a first-time homebuyer program in it, and this is an RFP to seek an administrator to start that first-time homebuyer program going, which will provide second mortgages in an amount up to $20,000 to first-time low-income home buyers. There's also a recently completed RFQ, which is very important as well. This is for consulting services on the MWBE Section 3 Davis-Bacon compliance that the city is doing. The city's in the process of now, that RFQ is completed, of selecting a firm among the applicants to provide technical assistance, training, and monitoring to city-funded developers to ensure that our MWBE goals are met as we build affordable housing. We have very important employment and minority contracting goals. They are essential to the success of this program, and this contractor will help us make that work. So we have a huge amount going on in our affordable housing work. I just wanted to give you a sense of some of those projects. Hundreds and hundreds of units being preserved and hundreds of units being built new. Right now, there's another RFP that will not quite now, but this spring, there'll be an RFP again for another $10 to $15 million that the city will be offering to support our nonprofit partners to build and preserve units. And we're looking forward to adding hundreds and hundreds of more units to this list. You all know about our teaching housing effort. I want to just mention it because we have not given up on it. The legislature has stymied us at every turn. This is a partnership that we have with the State Employees Credit Union Foundation and CASA. A long story short is that the county and school board have agreed to a land donation. The legislature is needed for approval is needed. They haven't given it, but we think we may have a better chance of getting it now and being able to build below market rate units for our first, second, and third year teachers to help attract teachers to Durham and to help them keep them in Durham on a really wonderful piece of property right near Lowe's Grove Middle School. I want to mention the long-term low-income homeowner relief that the coalition has been so involved in, and special huge shout out to Jim Savara, who has been just incredibly and productively and creatively persistent in this work. Jim, I don't see you here, but yeah, I see you now. The council is ready to do this. We want to do it, and we need our partners in the county. Of course, the county has the tax office. And if the county does approve the program, I know they're dealing with sort of legal issues around that. I am sure that the council is ready to join, and we know how important that is. I'll also say there is money, $10 billion in the American Rescue Act for assistance of long-term low-income homeowners who have been affected by COVID and hurt their ability to pay their mortgage. I spoke this morning with Karen Lotto, who believes that those funds will probably be administered by the state. But that is also a potential source of relief for our long-term low-income homeowners. I believe actually up to 100% of AMI, people will be eligible up to 100% of AMI. So that's something for the coalition to pay attention to, especially if it's at the state level. I want to talk now, though, about, so what I've tried to do is describe just the huge range and the cooperation with all the various nonprofits, as well as DHA, of work that's going on around affordable housing to build and preserve units. But there's a whole nother real important aspect of the affordable housing work, a couple more important aspects I don't want to touch on. One is the work that we're doing with our homeless residents, which has really had to change this year, as you know. What I have seen, though, in our homeless work in the last few years is the creation of a true infrastructure. And there are so many people, some of whom are on this call, that have been critical to the creation of the infrastructure that we have built to support our homeless residents. It hasn't been easy. There have been a lot of bumps along the road, but we now have cooperation between the city and county governments that we did not have for years around homelessness, which is great. We have coordinated entry. We have locally funded street outreach after the loss of the federal funds through Alliance. We have landlord engagement for the first time that the Community Empowerment Fund is contracted to do and doing a great job. We have a system. We have a system, and it's an imperfect system, but it's a system we can build on and improve. And again, I know so many of you all have been involved in building that. Huge shout out to our staff, our community development staff, Reginald and Karen, Hanalea, Lloyd, Matt, Ruby, Colin, since he's arrived, for creating this system, to all of the nonprofits that are part of this system. So important. We heard Carolyn Schultz report from Dick from Open Table Ministries. They're doing, they have a contract with the city for the White Flag Nights that Dick described briefly. That's just one example of what we're doing. So where are we now with our homelessness system? In a normal year, we would expect about $3 million in total funds for our homeless system. That's about what we were expecting this year. That includes about $1.1 million from city local taxes, which funds the Unsheltered Coordinating Agency and other things. It includes then about $2 million in federal ESG and other federal money for rapid rehousing, emergency shelter support, street outreach, and permanent supportive housing, and county funds. But then COVID hit, and we have had a flood of new needs and a flood of funds, I will say, and now we're going to get more from the American Rescue Act, which is great. How much have we had? In all, we've been awarded more than $12 million in COVID relief funds for fighting homelessness, and most of that is for rental assistance to prevent homelessness. I don't need to tell you all about the COVID-related eviction crisis we're facing, thousands and thousands of people who can't pay their rent. I've heard estimates of as much as $6 million per month in rental shortfall, so it's essential that we have federal help, and we're getting it, which is great, so that we can help prevent evictions on a potential scale not seen in our lifetime. You all know about most of these funds, the great bulk of which is, the first half of which has already been expended. That was about $7.7 million in HOPE funds for eviction prevention that the county received, and about another couple million through the city and county. Includes funds for rapid rehousing, expanded emergency shelter at the Carolina Duke Inn, and for the white flag nights. And these funds have been used up in the storm of need that we have experienced through COVID. We have now received another, between city and county, mostly through the city, but from the feds, about $9 million in rental assistance that will be distributed through Durham Social Services. And that money should, that system's being built now, and that money should be prepared to go out of the door pretty soon. So you get the idea. We've had much more money than we've ever had, but we've also have much more need that we never had. And we really have needed this new response from the Biden administration. It looks like now we will get about as much money in addition for rental assistance as we had previously. So we had about this $9 million. It looks like we'll probably receive about $9 more million. There are lots of issues about how easy or hard the state will be. Well, state will make it to distribute those funds, but we really, really need that. The need is very great. In the few months prior to the pandemic, we had about 23 families on a waiting list for emergency shelter or other housing options on an average night. And that number, and this was about as of 2 weeks ago, I haven't seen the most recent figures. The good news is that number has now dropped to about 10 families on the waiting list for emergency shelter. But the number of singles awaiting shelter or housing has grown from 81 to 109. And you know, this only scratches the surface of the need. The people in shelter with no place to go, the people on the streets, the thousands of people in Durham unemployed because of COVID who are hanging just above eviction and who we have to prevent from eviction. I do think that we're very lucky to have this American Rescue Act funding. It's going to help tremendously to get us through this next period of time. I could go into a lot of other things about the COVID challenges, but I think I feel like I'm maybe going over my time. So let me hit a couple of other important topics. One of the things that we hope to do, and you know, Drew Cummings, I'm sure is on the call. Peter Skillern has worked on this. We have really been trying to purchase a hotel. You all know that the county, through federal dollars, has had to spend millions in renting rooms for people to quarantine them, homeless people, and we really would have been much better served if we'd been able to use federal money to purchase such a hotel. And then this would have been useful for a big need that we have, which is respite care for people post-pandemic. This has been a need for a long time, and we really want to do this. Thanks to David Price, the new American Rescue Act does have provisions that the housing funds can be used to purchase such a hotel. And so this is something that a lot of us have been talking about and trying to figure out. We've tried to do it through the state. Hasn't happened yet. But I'm very much looking forward to that, and I really hope that we can make that happen. Let me just now, Brent, turn briefly to transit. But just to recap on the housing tax, the bond tax will be passed by the council this year. The affordable housing work is enormous and ongoing. We have fantastic partners. Not only DHA, but so many of the nonprofit partners. And then we have the homelessness work, which really has to continue to be at the heart of everything we do. We cannot rest as long as we had in the last point in time count, several hundred people in Durham, either in shelter or on the street. But getting to transit, I think there are three things that I want to talk about. First of all, there is significant federal money coming again for transit support. I spoke briefly to Sean Egan a few days ago, maybe it was last week, a little mixed up, yeah, about our transit funding. We are going to get a significant transit funding again. You all know that Go Durham, unlike a lot of transit systems around the country, maintain a high ridership during the pandemic. And we did so much to try to keep our riders safe. I think we distributed now over 300,000 free face masks on our transit, which is fantastic. I hope I got that number right, something in that range. And I've just been really proud of how we have sustained and even grown our transit system during this time. I'm excited, very excited about the transit emphasis corridors that will be in the Durham County Transit Plan. There's funding there for that, which is fantastic on Fayetteville and Holloway streets. Those are going to be made into wonderful transit emphasis corridors. We're going to make it so much easier and more frequent ridership there. And there's so much more work to be done to expand our local bus system and to serve our riders. And there's a huge effort being made in that regard. And I know you all are part of that effort, which is fantastic. At the same time, I really think it's important, and I really want the coalition to take the lead on this. And I've spoken to you all, some of you all about it, but I think this is going to be really important. We cannot lose sight of the fact that we need both strong local transit and strong regional transit. Both. 2/3 of the jobs in the next 20 years in this region are going to be created in Wake County. We have got to be able to make sure that our low-income residents are able to get these good jobs, and all over the triangle. And that means good regional transit. The commuter rail, as you all know, is under study right now. And that study is going to be important to show whether or not it's financially viable and whether or not it will have the ridership that will make it viable. That the commuter rail does go to 7, as planned, does go to 7 of the 10 largest employment centers in the triangle. And it goes right through downtown Durham, where we know that we have coming and currently existing most of our affordable housing, thousands of units of affordable housing, and those people need to be able to get to good jobs. If it is not the commuter rail, then we need to know what a good regional transit system will be. I urge you, I beg you to support both regional and local transit at a high level. If we don't have enough money in the transit tax coming in, we need to figure out to get both of these things financed. These are long-term, this is long-term work, and we need your leadership, folks in the coalition, to help make this happen. And then finally, I want to mention on the transit front, we also will need your advice on this from the coalition. The council is considering a bond for equitable and sustainable infrastructure. And we are struggling with the timing of this bond and exactly what should be on it. We ask our staff to come to us with what would be on a bond, what the potential need is that they've already identified for infrastructure around sidewalks, bicycle infrastructure, bus shelters, solarization, the kind of work that we need to do on recycling. We want to build our own recycling facility so we control our own future when it comes to recycling. We want to recycle our organics waste where we already have a strong pilot going. There's so much that we want to do in terms of sustainable infrastructure. They came to us and said, well, in addition to what we've already got planned, there's another $224 million in need. We can't do that on a single bond issue. So we asked them to go back and bring us a bond issue for $50 million. What would that look like? And they're doing that now. We're not sure about that timing of that. We're worried that it would be too quick to put it on the ballot this November. So it may be next year, but we're looking forward to having the insight of the coalition and your advice, not only about the timing, but about what a bond issue like that should consist of. We'll hear soon about it from our staff, and we're looking forward to your responses once we do hear back from our staff. So that was a lot. And I'm going to stop there and look forward to your comments and questions.
Okay. Hi, Mayor. This is Rita. Sorry I didn't get to introduce you, but so glad that you came out and spoke to us. And
Thank
there
you,
was
Rita.
a lot of great stuff.
Thank you,
first-
Randy. Good to see you.
You're welcome. Good to see you as well. There's several questions. How will this bond reform, hold hold on. And how does bond reform and expand public housing and choice vouchers?
So what the bond will do is it will support Durham Housing Authority in redeveloping several of its communities. In a couple of cases, that's rehabilitation of units, like at J.J. Henderson, where J.J. is not being torn down; it's being fixed up. And then it also would be building new units. So, for example, behind J.J., we'll be building the 80 units of affordable housing there. And it will be building units throughout downtown on current DHA properties. You also, though, asked Rita about housing choice vouchers, and this is a big deal. You all know that we have housing choice vouchers, something like, I'm going to say a number, it's about 2,700. And the problem with housing choice vouchers in Durham now is that market rate rents are so high that a lot of people who formerly used to take affordable housing choice vouchers don't do it anymore. So we have, I'm not sure the number now, I don't want to misspeak, but in the area of 100 vouchers still on the streets that people aren't able to get housing located. We have I mentioned before, but the Community Empowerment Fund has a wonderful program that's funded by the city to connect with landlords and try to get people connected to landlords and recruit landlords to take those vouchers. So that is supported, that is money that's supported by our affordable housing program, Rita. I'll also say one other thing that's very interesting that I just learned this morning, which is the American Rescue Act, which just passed Congress, has, and let me see if I can find this number. I believe that it is about, I think it's $5 billion for additional housing choice vouchers, which is great. Those vouchers, though, I'm not sure how they'll come to us, if they'll be distributed, to local housing authorities or through the state, exactly how it's going to happen. But that will be important. Those vouchers will be useful to people, and they are potentially temporary. If you lose your voucher after 2023, one of those vouchers, or you give it up, they won't be renewed. But between now and 2023, this could be a critically important source of housing for people. And beyond that, for people who find long-term housing vouchers. So the big deal with vouchers is that it's really hard to place them. And we are doing a lot of work to try to make that happen.
This is Dick. I just want to remind folks to keep their microphone on mute.
Thank you very much for that.
Thanks a lot.
Mayor Schultz, that's Spencer Bradford. Something that we've got word last week has been confirmed in development that we want to express appreciation for from In Hunger Durham and DCIA is the new senior shuttle to get senior citizens from 5 low-income senior housing communities to the grocery store weekly, making rounds to Walmart or Food Lion and other grocery stores. We've very much, I know Betsy Kreitz and Carlene Fife Phillips aren't on this morning, but both of them have been very appreciative of the work that with the Go Durham to make that happen starting next month. So that's another good step forward for Durham Transit.
Thank you, Spencer. I think if Sean is on, I think if Sean or Bill or any of those folks are on from Durham Transit, yeah, there's Sean. Yeah, huge shout out. They have been so creative and much gratitude. I also, though, Spencer, I want to say, just thinking about the kind of work that you all do earlier this winter or in the fall, I reached out to Spencer for the kind of work that he does, just so person to person, help somebody get settled, get a TV. Just that one-to-one work, Spencer, that you do and so many other people working with our homeless residents do. And just so much gratitude I want to express to you as well.
It's so good to see you. Thanks for being here. You mentioned the expanding housing choices, and information was provided in the chat that 50 permit requests are pending. Has the city begun to provide any technical assistance for people who want to add housing units, or is the funding will depend on the bond issue, I presume, but has any technical assistance being provided?
Jim, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm sorry to say. It may be that there's somebody on our community development department that's on the call that can answer, but if not, I will. I expect not yet, but I will find that out and let you know. If you shoot me an email, Jim, and remind me, I'll find out.
Is there any information on how many permits for the accessory dwelling units are available since this ordinance is passed?
I think that Jim just said, Rita, 50 related permit applications have been submitted from Lisa Miller here in the chat. Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, it's so great because I know so little, but there's so many people that know so much. And they can.
Does the city have plans for programs to help homeowners build ADUs?
So there are two aspects to that. One of which we just talked about, which is the technical assistance. And the second aspect of that is we want to pilot funding for low-income homeowners so that can support their construction of ADUs. And that has not started yet to my knowledge, but I'm sure the department is now putting out RFPs, as I mentioned earlier, for a lot of these programs, and I'm sure that one's in the pipe. Again, if you remind me, I will check on that with community development and get back to you with the timing.
I know that, is there any word yet about whether Durham's election will proceed in November, or is it going to be delayed because of the redistricting, redrawing ward boundaries? And will that affect whether the bond issue, that the new bond issue might go forward in this budget or not?
Yes, no word on that yet. So just to let everybody know, the State Board of Elections has recommended to the legislature that they put off all municipal elections until next spring or summer because of the census not being completed on time. There are 62 cities in the state which have, what would you say, districts that are have to be redrawn when the census comes out. Those cities certainly would not be able to have their elections. Durham is not one of those. As you all know, we have elections there, that we have districts, residential districts that you have to live in if you're a candidate, but the city votes really at large for all of its members. So so the legislature could decide and take the recommendation of the state board that all cities delay their election, or they could decide just some cities. We don't know yet. I'm not sure. But I think we'll have to know within a month or so, because people have to start filing for election and those kinds of things. So I think in the next month or 6 weeks, we ought to know. It would be beneficial in terms, if we're going to do a bond issue, it could potentially be very beneficial if Durham was a city where we didn't have our elections until next spring, because then we would have the time to get the community input that we need for sure. And that we could do it by this November. It'd be harder, but if we had till next spring, I think we could certainly do it. So that would be one positive benefit potentially if we decided to have the bond issue, which the council is very interested in.
Webb, you have the next question? Webb, you're on mute. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Mr. Mayor, it's good to have you with us. Thank you for making time. I listened to you talk about each of those different affordable housing projects, things done, things underway. And I'd heard you give this report once before. And what strikes me is, first, there's a lot that's going on. I mean, it's an enormous amount of both preserving existing affordable housing and creating new affordable housing. And the second thing is that I can't, and I try to remember all these so I can keep them in mind or talk to the people about it. I can't begin to do it. And so I'm wondering, in the city, I found it's not enough just to do it. You got to tell people what you've done. Is there some kind of short summary, a couple of pages that says, yeah, let us tell you in the last year, the last 2 years, here's what's happened? Is that's available to the residents and folks to have and to remind themselves what all is going on?
So there will be very soon, I'm not sure exactly how soon, a website that will contain all of those things. I'm kind of embarrassed to say it might be already, there might be a version of it already up that I don't know about. And again, I'll find out from community development if there is such a list already up, but there will be, and it will track each of the developments. It will talk about the city funding, other funding. It will talk about the phase of development they're in, design, construction, and so forth. And it will talk, how complete they are. I mean, and that website will also be, what needs to be on that website will also be advised by the Affordable Housing Implementation Committee, which some of the members are on this call. So, yeah, I like I say, I'm kind of embarrassed to say that there might be some of that information already up that I don't know, but I know that the full-blown website is coming.
Well, that'll be great. And I love websites, but I'm also thinking about something in another medium or another means of communication that could say, here's the reports of the citizens on affordable housing work in the year 2020 or 2019. So that folks have other ways of getting access to that information. Anyway, it's a great story. I just want to see how we can figure out how to tell the story.
Yeah,
Thank you.
those are great thoughts, and would appreciate any thoughts you have about, the exact, how that what would be best.
Thank you, Marshall, so much for your great presentation. There were 2 more questions, but I'll send them to you personally and get back to the people that asked. I'm now going to turn it over to Dick Hales. It's on you.
Thanks, Rita. Appreciate that. And I appreciate everyone that sent questions in, as well as the great comments by the mayor. Let's see, we're winding down here. We always have a few updates on some related topics that we try and stay abreast of. I wondered if Jim Savara would give us an update on historic preservation plan for Oldham Towers and Liberty Street apartments.
Yes, let me give you a quick summary. As part of the approval process for the replacement of these buildings by the Housing Authority, there was a review of these quote historic buildings and whether or not there's grounds for not going ahead with demolition. The response, I think, is adequate, has shown that the Housing Authority will be keeping records of what was there, but that the program should go forward. There was an effort to get community indication of support for this. The coordinating committee, under a tight deadline, the coordinating committee supported signing the memorandum of agreement and communicated that to the city so that it could be sent to the State Historic Preservation Commission. But we also reminded them in a cover note that Webb, who signed for the coordinating committee, reminded the city that we are very concerned about and committed to adequate relocation for all existing residents. the agreement covers the entire demolition of all of the structures, but it's going forth in phases. And this first phase will only involve 72 units being demolished. So, and adequate plans are in place, and we need to help make sure that those are monitored and adhered to.
Thanks, Jim. Is John Talmadge with us to talk about transit equity issues?
I am. Thank you, Dick. So the Durham Transit team, the public sector, expects to be releasing scenarios, investment scenarios in early April, and there'll be a public comment period. So we're watching that, and we'll be preparing to help people understand the scenarios, what they would mean for people, so that they can comment on them. We're also capturing video testimonies of people's experience with the transit system today, and that will be available ready probably early April as well. I also want to share something. This Thursday is Durham Transit and Paratransit Employee Appreciation Day. The mayor has agreed to do a proclamation during the council work session. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We will be doing physical thank you cards for riders to complete so that we can deliver to the transit employees probably on Wednesday because of Thursday's weather. And there's an electronic card that everyone can sign. So there's both an email link that I just put in the chat, or you can text thanks to the number there, and your information will be added to this digital card that will also be presented to the employees. So thank you for considering participating in that activity.
Thank you, John. Let's see, Marcia McNally to talk about Northgate redevelopment.
Yes, I'm mostly just going to talk about the survey and that was conducted, the online survey. We have been, several of us in the coalition, along with folks from North Carolina State Department of Landscape Architecture and Environmental Planning, have been working with members of a group that formed recently called the Northgate Mall Neighborhood Council, 7 neighborhoods, which include Walltown, Northgate Park, Duke Park, Trinity Heights, Watts Hillendale, and Old West Durham. In other words, the neighborhoods closest to the Northgate Mall, to first in this last fall to develop site plans, alternatives for people to consider. The group then held both Zoom and in-park community events to get people to review those 3 alternatives and give feedback. And then more formally, they gave feedback in an online survey. There were 407 responses to that survey, which is a really amazing number, particularly considering it was a detailed survey covering a lot of different topics, but mostly wanting to know what people were looking for on the Northgate Mall site, what kind of retail, for example, whether or not affordable housing, mixed use, more open space, and so on. Right at this very moment, I'm working with the folks at North Carolina State to finish part of the processing some of the survey data that was open-ended. And then we meet at the end of this week with the survey organizers, as well as DataWorks, who has been helping the group for a long time now. We're going to talk about how best to present this this information to the community.
Thanks, Marcia. You may note on the agenda, there are several other meeting announcements shown. Our future coalition topics at our monthly meeting in April, May, and June are Durham Transit Planning, Durham Housing Authority Priorities, and reuse of the former police headquarters at 505 West Chapel Hill Street, in part for affordable housing. Would also note there's a Durham Housing Authority Town Hall tomorrow night, co-sponsored by Representative Hawkins and Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People. Also, already mentioned transit and paratransit employee appreciation day later this week. And that we're having our coalition policy committee meeting a week from tomorrow on Tuesday, March 23rd at 5 p.m. So happy that everyone was able to join us today. Once again, let's give special thanks to our speaker, Mayor Steve Schewel. And with that, I believe we're adjourned, and thanks again for attending today.